Hello and welcome to another woodturning episode. This time we'll be making a bowl from walnut with maple and PurpleHeart banding. I'm hoping to take the lessons learned from the previous bowl, so let's see if I can keep this one firmly mounted to the lathe. I drew this one up in CAD to accurately work out the segment sizes, and here is what I hope it will look like when it's finished. I began by cutting the timber to the required sizes. I do not own a bandsaw with a large enough capacity to rip timber over 100mm, so I had to resort to using my table saw, cutting halfway through this piece of walnut, then turning it over to complete the cut. Here you can see me setting up the mitre fence to an 80-degree angle. This will give each ring 18 segments. I began cutting the segments for the base ring. I would have preferred to use a solid piece of walnut, but I didn't have a piece big enough, so a segmented ring it is. At some point I will be making a table saw sled with an adjustable mitre fence, but until then I will have to make do. Incidentally, I did buy a fully adjustable metal mitre fence, but unfortunately it does not fit the slot in my table saw. With the base ring and the feature ring segments cut, I sanded each piece to clean them up and hopefully get a better fit. I then did a dry test to see if they went together okay. Despite the inaccuracies in my table saw mitre fence, I seem to be getting really good results, but I'm sure an adjustable mitre fence sled will make things even better. Perhaps I will do a video covering how I make it. For the glue up I use Titebond 2. It has a good drying time and is easy to find when I need to reorder it. I apply it liberally, assemble the ring and use hose clamps to hold it all together. The board I am using is a piece of scrap MDF. I rub machine wax into the surface, then the glue is easily cleaned up when I'm finished. The feature ring goes together in a similar fashion with 5mm thick maple between each segment. I cut these a bit long, which didn't really matter, I just had to make sure the strips were flush with the ring's outer diameter. Off camera I glued 5mm maple strips to the walnut. This will form a lighter banding to the feature ring. I was using up all my remaining odds and ends of walnut, so I ended up with a number of shorter lengths to make the segments for the last two rings. The last two rings went together without any problems. When the glue had set up, I removed the hose clamps and it was time to run all the rings through the drum sander. I originally purchased the drum sander to flatten cutting boards and small tabletops, but owning this has made the process of flattening segmental ball rings a breeze. I suppose this could be done on a large sheet of sandpaper on a level flat surface, but that would be a long laborious task. And if I didn't have the sander, I think I would still be making bowls from solid blanks. So with the rings sanded flat, I moved on to gluing the bowl. A straightforward enough process, taking care to make sure the rings don't slide out of alignment. This time I tried clamping them. It worked okay-ish, but I really need to come up with a better way of doing this. At the time of filming this, I had a look at buying some cheap second-hand weights from eBay to use instead of clamps. This was at the time of the second UK lockdown, so cheap exercise equipment was not going to happen, if you could find any in the first place. As soon as I started applying clamping pressure, the top ring moved. I got it back into alignment, but it's a real pain when they move and slide about. After this I finished for the evening, but I had to check it a couple of hours later, just for peace of mind. The next day the bowl was ready for turning. I mounted it to the lathe ready to form the mortise. First I marked it out, then began hollowing it out with a parting tool and a 3/8 bowl gouge. With the mortise complete, I mounted the bowl in the 4-jaw chuck, being careful not to over tighten it. I've used segmental base rings before and one has failed, resulting in the workpiece launching itself off the lathe. Definitely not something I want to repeat. As you can see, I also used a tailstock and an oak boss to give added support, especially in the early stages. Doing this gave me the confidence it would be secure enough whilst I turned away a lot of the weight. Watching this clip, I think I can say my technique with the bowl gouge is getting better, though my lathe is struggling a bit to keep up with the depth of cut I was trying to take. Turning the speed up helped, and I was able to get some reasonable cuts. With the outside of the bowl turned roughly to shape, I began removing material from the inside of the bowl. For this I was still using my bowl gouge, but with the tailstock in position, at times it was a struggle to get to the required angle to get a good cut, so I had to resort to using the Easy Wood Tools carbide finisher. The carbide cutter makes easy work of removing material. Taking fairly light cuts, it soon gets the inside of the bowl to shape. I want to keep the tailstock in position for as long as I can, and the finisher has a 6mm diameter circular cutter, so it cuts down the size of the bowl very easily. At some point I will invest in a larger carbide cutter. I think it will help, but they are not cheap. the inside of the bowl more or less to shape, I used the Simon Hope negative rake scraper to fine tune the surface. I also used an 1¼ inch negative rake scraper. Between the two tools, I got to a reasonably good finish. The Simon Hope scraper works best with the workpiece spinning at over 1200 RPM. This can be a bit scary, but it's not for long. It's also important to keep it sharp. Between clips I was using a fine grade diamond card to keep a good edge. The rim needed a bit of attention to clean it up, so I used the bowl gouge and scrapers to fine tune it. I ended up taking too much off, and the rim lost a lot of the shape I was hoping for. So finally, with the majority of the bowl to shape, I removed the tailstock support so I could complete the centre. I checked the chuck was tight in the mortise and carefully used scrapers to get to the finished shape. A little bit more fine tuning to get the centre blended into the rest of the bowl, and it was time to move on to finishing the outside. I had previously got the outside of the bowl to a reasonable shape, and it just needed some more work to finish it. The 1¼ inch scraper made short work of removing the material. I also used a skew chisel to achieve a smoother surface finish. Every now and then you can see me stopping the lathe to check the bowl surface. I have seen other wood turners running their fingers over the workpiece without stopping it. Each to their own, but for me, the short amount of time it takes to stop the lathe, it isn't worth taking the risk of injury. I did once touch a spinning workpiece, and my thumb bears the scars to prove it, though I'll save that story for another day. With the bowl shape finished, I moved on to sanding from 80 to 400 grit. I will save you the pleasure of watching the whole process, but to be honest, I actually don't mind doing it. With the sanding completed, I cleaned the surface with denatured alcohol to get rid of the fine sawdust. Next, I applied a good coat of acrylic sanding sealer and used wire wool to denib it. Up next is Yorkshire grit, 2 applications with plenty of clean paper towels to remove the residue. quickly followed by a wood wax 22, 3 coats applied with clean folded paper towels. A quick safety note here, do not use old rags to apply finish to a spinning workpiece. If paper catches, it rips very easily, whereas rags don't. If you must use cloth tight rags, then buy the specially made ones. They are designed to tear apart, and never wrap anything around your hands or fingers when applying a finish. And finally, to finish, I applied 2 coats of Hampshire Sheen microcrystalline wax. And that's it folks, thanks for watching, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.